Welcome to the Jericho Force podcast, where we learn how to integrate faith into the work that we do. Don't conform to the world's way of doing business, transformed by doing business God's way. Here's our host, my husband, author, speaker, teacher, encourager, and stewardship coach, Jason Davis.
What's going on, everybody? What is going on? I am Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortify, and I'm your host of the Jericho Force podcast. Here on the Jericho Force podcast, we talk about what it means to integrate faith into the work that we do and how we live out our faith in the marketplace. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, we've got another exciting episode. I say that every week, but tonight, I've got one of my brothers on tonight. Listen. This is somebody I've had several conversations with, and we always get deep. We always talk about God. We always talk about challenging things, and I'm so excited to bring you in on some of the conversations that this brother and I have been talking about when we talk about the things of God. Before I bring him on, let me introduce him to you. Dr. Nathaniel Dunlap, Jr. currently serves as the founder and executive director of the PRF Teaching Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit teaching organization renowned for teaching financial and stewardship principles to diverse communities across the nation. Dr. Dunlap is a former commissioned officer in the U.S. Army, a wartime veteran, as well as an ordained minister. He is the former leader of the Army's Personal Financial Management course at Fort Benning, Georgia, and has worked as a consultant to the federal government on national security matters for almost 20 years. He has authored 2 books, Don't Leave Me Like This, Inspiration to Leave a Legacy, and What's Next, Preparing for Eternity. A respected educator and veteran of higher education, Dr. Dunlap also serves as the Chief Diversity Officer for Point University in West Point, Georgia, where he also teaches in the Department of Biblical Studies. Dr. Dunlap's academic crown flaunts a bachelor's degree in Individualized Studies, Administration of Justice from Virginia State University, master's degrees from Columbus State University, MPA, and Columbis Theological Seminary, and earned a Doctor of Ministry degree, Conflict Transformation, from New York Theological Seminary. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Jericho Force podcast, Dr. Nathaniel Dunlap, Jr., and I call him Dr. Nate.
Thank you, sir. It is definitely a pleasure and an honor to be here. We have not had a conversation in quite such a time, so I'm glad to be here and doing it tonight.
Yes. You know, Dr. Nate, you're one of my favorite people to talk to, and maybe it's something about that Philadelphia blood. I don't know. Maybe that has a little bit to do with it. And so, Dr. Nate, we know what a year. The Philadelphia Phillies making the World Series. Philadelphia Eagles are currently undefeated. Philadelphia Union, tough break in the MLS Cup, but it's been good times for the city of Philly.
Oh yeah, I'm sitting here looking at my Philadelphia Eagles cup. That's going to keep my throat the way it needs to be as we had this conversation. I'm looking at my Mike Quick picture that my daughter got for me one Christmas. I got a Philadelphia Eagles championship cup when we won the Super Bowl. So I'm just surrounded by greatness tonight, especially being here with you, my brother.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Nate, I know everybody sees your illustrious bio, and I know that you're one of those people who are like, listen, God has graced me to do a lot, and that's fine. But give us the backstory, Dr. Nate, with all the education and the experience, and especially as a veteran, thank you for your service. How did you get to where you are today in 2022?
Yeah, so again, growing up in Philly, I was able to be a part of a lot of diverse communities growing up. Those who see me in today's time, 2022, don't know that I grew up with a Catholic background. And I saw a lot of things being in the Catholic tradition growing up. And I was pure. It was innocent. I had freedom as a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old to just be in church and just do what we did in church. My background had took a turn. My mom got divorced, and Catholic school was no more. And so then I wound up being in public school. Nothing against public school at all. It made me part of who I am today. But when I was in the public school, it was less diverse. And then when I went to high school, it was very much diverse. Went to high school in a place called in the northeast section of Philly. And when I went into the military right after high school, it seems like God had me on this path of diversity, equity, and inclusion way back then. I just didn't know it because I was one of the ones that didn't have a problem and didn't get into a lot of fights with people from Iowa that never saw black people before, right? Or wasn't always supporting the brother from Baltimore who never really was involved with white people before. And so I was kind of like a mediator, if you will, in some respects, of trying to get people to just get along with each other. And it had nothing to do with, walking with Christ, because I really wasn't walking with Christ during that time. It was just being in the right place at the right time and having good morals and values instilled in me by my mom and my father figures and my father. So I went in the military, enlisted in the military, and I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be, and you'll probably hear some new stuff today, Jason. I wanted to be a special agent. I had an incident when I was 14 years old where two white guys, undercovers, jumped out of a van in my neighborhood and put me on a wall and put me in handcuffs and rolled me around. And then they told me to get out the van after about 30 minutes, uncuffed me, and told me to go about my business. And I had a real problem with that because there was no apology, right? I'm young and naive. I'm like, you done drove me, I'm 15 minutes away from the house, and you had mistaken identity, and you just tell me to go, even though I told you, I wasn't doing anything wrong, which I wasn't. And so I wanted to be in law enforcement. I wanted to be one of those guys that fought for people that could not fight for themselves. And so joining the military, I could not go directly into that field. I had to go in as another occupational specialty. And then after that, after I got all the credentials that I needed, my law enforcement career started. And then I served as a special agent for the United States Army for several years. And I did a lot of cool things. I did protective service missions all over the world and protected the president and some other folks. I worked economic crimes. I worked drugs. I led a drug team for a major installation. I've done undercover work. See, all this stuff you never knew about me, Jason, right? But all of that had to do with part of this quest for justice. And so when I started walking with Christ, I was saved in 94. I accepted Christ in 94, but me and Jesus didn't start having a walking relationship until about 2000. I realized that there was a lot of unjust things in the world. I knew it from my career, but I started seeing it in church when I started being involved in church. I started seeing where people would fuss about money when I didn't understand why they were fussing about money. It's in the bank, just help folks, right? I came with this innocence, if you will, of how you're supposed to treat people. And they did something, Jason. They did the wrong thing with me. They told me to read this book called the Bible. Well, I read it, and I found out some stuff we wasn't doing right. We weren't taking care of folk like we should have been taking care of folk, right? And that's what birthed with this thing called PRF, right? It wasn't starting off as an organization. It was just God taking my pain from all the people I saw getting involved in drugs and the ones I helped to get to a place called jail, the ones I gave breaks to not just go ahead and do it again, the economic crimes and why people were doing things of fraud and stealing and why and what was the reason behind it. Back then, it really wasn't that I really cared. It was I was doing my job. But when the Lord started working on me and that was not my primary, I started seeing things through a different lens. And so long story short, that's what also led me into the national security space that I did I gave it up now, Jason. So January 21, I was officially done. And I had a really good run, but a lot of the investigations and cases that I worked were economic in nature. And so I dealt with a lot of folks, thousands of folks over almost 20-year career in just that. of dealing with people that were having a lot of tough financial times. So it just seems fitting that all those different experiences that I've been able to be a part of, that God used it to build what is now a really wonderful organization, right? That has wonderful people that are serving, and the things that we get to do in people's lives are amazing. The people that we get to serve, the pastors that don't want folks to know that they are being helped, the ones who do not care that people know that they're being helped, the ones who allow us to help their congregations, the ones who are in congregations that the pastors won't allow us to help, but we're still helping them anyway. We have a tremendous responsibility at PRF. And we're grateful that God has blessed us the way that God has blessed us. And I think and believe that it's come from us being faithful over almost 15 years now, when nobody would give us a dime, to now people giving us money, right?
Wow.
To people not asking for help, to people busting down the door saying, I need help. So we're tremendously blessed. I'm blessed. My family is blessed. And now I got pulled in and asked to go to this place called Point University to serve as chief diversity officer. And I get to impact lives in a different way on a day-to-day basis. It keeps me busy between PRF and Point, but God is faithful and gives me the strength and a good support team around me. So I'm thankful.
Man, Dr. Nate, I appreciate you giving me some insight and the listeners on some new things. See, folks, I'm telling you, there's some new stuff we hadn't even talked about yet. So you're getting the inside info.
Yeah.
Dr. Nate, as you were talking, I was piecing some things together. Can you talk to the people? Because I know with your passion and your expertise, can you draw the daisy chain for us between diversity, justice, economics, and money? Because those are four themes that as people go back and they listen to your backstory and then they look at the present work you're doing now, we'll get deeper into PRF too, but what don't people know about the way those four things are connected?
Yeah, so excuse me, when it comes to diversity, one of the major things that I'm even more aware of now, right? You know certain things, but until you're doing something a little bit different, that's when you really start to really know, right? From a different angle or through a different lens. So diversity hasn't been a big thing to me at all because of my diverse background, right? I grew up in a Catholic church. I was a member of a Southern Baptist Convention church, right? For those who don't know, that's primarily white folk, right? I was a minister in the Southern Baptist church. I got ordained in the National Baptist Church. I graduated from a Presbyterian seminary. So diversity is not uncommon to me. It's a strength, if you will. And just like it's a strength for me, it could be a strength for others if we recognize that it goes beyond black and white, male and female, right? The basic diversity, what we call diversity markers that are out there. And the biggest thing right now is diversity of thought, right? Diversity of thought is that piece where, and diversity of ideas, where we have to be able to embrace how others think, because nobody's supposed to be thinking like me, right? I should think like I think because of my experiences. You should think like you think because of your experiences. And so we take diversity and we have to just unpack it a little bit sometimes to understanding that it's bigger than what sometimes society, quote unquote, has told us or showed us that it is. And so then you say, well, if God loves everybody, if God created mankind, humanity in his image and after their likeness, right, then we should have less division if we're looking at people like God sees them. And so then, therefore, you take that piece, and now you start to say, well, with all of the injustices in the world, and maybe it's because we don't recognize and understand or even embrace the diversity of God. Maybe we only look at God or been told or taught to look at God as one way, right? You have some people that look at God as just being nothing but loving, but God, when God gets tired, Jason, then God pours out wrath. And sometimes he does the opposite, right? So God is not just one way when we want God to fit it. So taking this whole theme of justice, and God is a God of justice. The Bible has a lot to say about justice. Go, not you, Jason, but go read the Psalms, everybody. There's a lot to say about justice in the Bible. So now we read that and we say, okay, well, God is about diversity. We can't deny that. And God is a God of justice. He does not like his people being treated bad. He has given us this commandment of love thy neighbor as thyself, right? That's a matter of justice, right? Treat people right. We have moral laws in the Old Testament. We have the Ten Commandments. All these matters of justice are so in front of our face if we take the time to slow down just a little bit and start looking at justice through the eyes of God versus justice in the eyes of a criminal justice system that is often unjust and inhumane. And so then I think about economics. I say, well, what's the justice or what's the injustice? Economics is that system of how money and finances play out in society. And we can clearly see that there are a lot of injustices when it comes to economics in our country, right? We have a class system that has been a class system going all the way back to the founding days of this country. And again, I'm from Philly, right? So where they signed the Declaration of Independence. And so you think about that, you say, well, you know, we talk a lot in this country about economics, and we talk a lot in this country about how everybody has a shot, but the reality is everybody doesn't have a shot. We have different opportunities, but some people have it harder than others. And so then when you look at what's at the heart of the economics, you say, well, how does money really play into that? Because people oftentimes who have money often have power, right? You don't find no billionaires that don't have any power. And so money does bring in our country this sense of power and also privilege. And so since it does bring this sense of power and privilege, how we interact with money, how we engage with money, those of us who have money, what we do to help people with our money, oh my goodness. We should be a lot farther along in our country, in many of our communities, but there's some disconnects there. And I just try to help people to fill in the gaps a lot of times, and take care of things through a different perspective than what they may have been taught or the lack thereof. So it's a tangled web, if you will, Jason, but I think we have the opportunity to get people to a better place sooner rather than later.
So good, Dr. Nate. And I think the way that you beautifully laid out how those are related, that gives us a foundation to at least start thinking differently about how do you begin to untangle the web, or maybe just to understand the web that's tangled. So I love the way you put that. And so that people know, Dr. Nate, so with everything that you're doing, this is where we finally come up on PRF, the PRF Teaching Institute, your nonprofit organization, teaching financial and stewardship principles to diverse communities all across the country. Talk to us about the role of PRF and what you're seeing out there in the communities as you go in to teach and empower.
Yes, I'm glad the last thing that you said was empower, right? I've been on this really, even from the time when we first started talking, when we first met, empowerment is very big to me. It's so big that I said this on Sunday during the message. I said for the last couple of years, it seems like every message that I preach has something about power or empowering. So, and I feel so strong about that. I'm starting backwards, maybe, going backwards, if you will, starting another place. Because when I read what's in Acts chapter 2, where Jesus, where the disciples actually encountered the Holy Spirit, right, which was as a result of Jesus saying, stay here in Jerusalem, or stay there, go there, and stay there, and you shall receive power once the Holy Spirit comes upon you, right? And you think about that. Something as powerful as the Holy Spirit being in our lives gives us the ability to deal with a whole bunch of things that I just talked about, diversity, justice, economics, and money, if we are allowing ourselves to be empowered. And so with what we do at PRF and how that matches so much of how God desires for his people to be better than what they are, that's amazing all within itself. So when we're trying to, and we don't have to always try very hard, right? God is definitely leading us in the people that come to us. You know, when somebody reaches out to us for a consultation, and one of our stewardship coaches, we sit down with them, whether it's, you know, face-to-face, online, through Zoom, telephone. All we're trying to do is get a person to be in a comfortable space, to be able to share what their experience is, how they think about money, what are some of their stewardship practices, right? Do they budget? Do they not budget? And one of the things that I found is that when you create the space or the environment for people who are in need, but also are at that pivotal moment to where if you do it right, then they'll keep coming back. Not because you're selling them anything, but because you're giving them hope, because you're giving them tasks to do that they can achieve, right? We're not telling anybody, listen, we want you to be out of debt. There's $10,000 worth of debt. 3 months, you can do it. If you put back $3,300 a month. No, we're not. That's not it. It's where are you and where is your situation at? And so I know I hit on so much about this thing of empowerment because I found that so many people are not empowered to take control of their finances. They've not been empowered to focus their time and attention on being a better steward. And being a good steward or being a better steward is it catapults people to being better in the other areas of their life, like debt and credit and planning and saving and wills and inheritances and giving and tithing. The power piece is where we got to get people to be at in this season right now.
Amen to that, Dr. Nate. I love the meaning of the organization, PRF, possessions, resources, finances. How did you come up with the name, Dr. Nate, and how do those 3 letters factor into everything that you all do?
Yes. Excuse me. So I remember back in, this journey really started for me back in 2003, 2004, 2005. And I remember coming back from overseas doing one of those things I was doing back then. And I remember being overseas in the Middle East. And I don't share this story often, Jason. And at that point in my life, after all the other stuff that I'd done in my career, that was the moment that I had the most peace in my life, with a lot of stuff going on that nobody knows about, including my wife. But God gave me such a peace. And I started writing over there. And God just started downloading into me. And so, not to start an organization, but it was really about God sharing with me what are the areas that people need help in. People need help with their possessions and how to take care of their possessions and understanding their possessions, right? How do we get things done? We get things done with resources, right? Who's going to be the one to help? And God revealed to me that we are God's greatest resource on earth, right? We are the resource of the source, right? So we are the ones that should be making things happen in people's lives and in our lives. And then when it came to finances, it's kind of funny because finances was the last thing that came to me. And so it kind of started off as, finances seemed like and money seemed to be the thing, but that wasn't the focal point for me. And so as I kept just playing around with these themes, I couldn't come up with anything better, Jason. It was like, you know what, PRF, and I wasn't even organization at that time. resources and finance. It didn't even make sense, right? It was just like, it's just possessed. And I promise you, we went through so many different iterations, but PRF just stuck there. PRF is, it came to me in a sense of where if somebody has possessions, but then there's something, a thing of conflict that happens with either their resources or their finances, then it affects their possessions. Or if something happens with their finances, it has the ability to affect their possessions. So how these things constantly are moving back and forth to each other is what we have to try to deal with and what we got to try to get people to understanding. And so even when I did my dissertation, I mean, talking like 7 years after that, I completed a doctorate degree, and God wouldn't let me do anything other than deal with PRF. And so my dissertation was possession, resources, and finances, helping communities understand the interconnected relationship between physical, spiritual, and financial needs. They're all connected. And once people get a better understanding how they are connected in their individual lives, people will be more, I guarantee you, people will be more empowered. When you realize that it's not about money, right? It's not about having actual cash a lot of times. It may be the fact that you're not managing your cash, or it may be how you're treating the house or the apartment, right? Your possessions, what are you doing with your possessions? Or it could be you have a great job that is a resource that provides you opportunities. How are you treating your job? How are you treating those who work on your team or work for you? How are you treating the resources at your job? Getting people to think and critically think about these things is at the heart of possessions, resources, and finances for us.
I love that. I love the origin story, Dr. Nate, and I also love the practicality that the Holy Spirit revealed to you. Like you said, he just downloaded it into you, and the rest was history. I love that. Dr. Nate, as people are, and I'm sure, and folks, as you're listening to this live or as you go back and listen to this episode, PRF is an organization that you definitely want to follow, pay attention to, and donate. And so, Dr. Nate, what are some of the programs as you're out in the community? And I almost had, I think at the time, I've had a lot going on this year, but I almost wanted to call you because I was going to say you were on tour. You were literally just going out in the community. So tell them a little bit about the programs that PRF offers when you go out and interact with people in the community, because after you get into that, I'm going to say, folks, here's where you can go donate.
Amen. Amen. Well, listen, I'll say this real quick. You know, when PRF became PRF, or Possession, Resources, and Finances, right, the first place we ever did any teaching was not in my own community, ironically. It was in Mississippi, in Biloxi, Mississippi. Somebody called us and asked us to come and do a 3-day workshop at a 3-day ministry event, and wanted us to do the financial piece because they heard about that I was writing from somebody else, right? And so from then I realized that it was about going wherever God wanted me to go. And so, yeah, it was pretty much, you know, me, my wife, right? It was just me primarily, and me and my wife at times. And so up until COVID, we were always on the go, traveling to different communities, doing conferences and all of that. And when COVID hit, we realized we were trying to do some online things, right? Before then, we were trying to have that online presence, but I just felt that it was necessary to just constantly have that face-to-face, that personal interaction. I never wanted to let that go. Well, when COVID hit and people couldn't do what they normally were doing, and we couldn't travel as well, people started asking for one-on-one help. And so one of the biggest things, one of the greatest things that we do, ways that we serve, is through our one-on-one consultation. And so we built a very successful, if you will, consultation piece into PRF. And so we have 2 packages. So we do free consultations, and then we have packages where we want people to pay, right? You come, you want 45 minutes, you pay. We have several stewardship coaches that are really good at what they do in the community that I live in Alabama now, and a couple other places, even up north. And so that's one of the big things for us is the one-on-one consultations where we get to really sit down with people and then develop a relationship with them, give them a plan of action, making sure that what we're giving them the task to do, that they're achievable, Jason, right? You got to give folks achievable goals, right? One of the best books that I've ever read is How You Eat an Elephant One Bite at a Time by Bill Hogan, right? You've got to chip away at it, which means people have to be dedicated to the long term, right? And we don't have to say, listen, this is an 18-month process. Like, listen, let's just do this one thing and come back next week, right? Let's just do these 2 days and come back next week, right? Hey, this one lady, $150, spend $150 on food, not talking about groceries, and then you wonder why you broke. Well, how about this? Can you put something in the crock pot? You know what? That's me. I can do that. All right, now listen. You know what you got going on, right? You work the second job, all this stuff. You got your kids doing this. Can you put something in the crock pot? How many days can you put something in the crock pot? I think I could do 2. All right, now listen, I ain't going to ask you which 2. You pick those 2 days, and I'm going to help you to be accountable, right, by following up with you to make sure. And then, oh, yeah, I quit my second job because behaviors changed. Like, so that's why these consultations are important, because they work when you have people that care about you, care about your well-being, and are destined to continue with you as long as you're willing to do the work. So the other thing is the PRF Institute. This is the education arm of what we do. And so with the PRF Institute, we have, for years, we had 7 courses that we offered: financial healing, on stewardship, one on credit, one on debt, planning and saving was in one. We have one on giving, one on tithing, and then one that focuses on wills and inheritances. And we have now changed that up. And so it's funny that we're talking about this right now, because we have now gone to a model that focuses on bundles. And so now we have, and it is not released yet, so y'all are getting it, so y'all can just keep coming back to the website like, when's it going to come out, right? So we have a stewardship bundle that focuses on 7 different lessons. And what we're going to do is we're going to release a different lesson over the course of 7 weeks, but it's going to be an 8-week bundle, if you will, because there's a consultation built in there as well. And so every week you'll get a different lesson. So you'll get financial healing on one, you'll get one on stewardship, you'll get one on credit, and then you just deal with that particular subject matter every week. And oh my goodness, I that's all I can share right now. But that stewardship bundle is critical. And then we have a legacy bundle, and legacy is my heart. And so where we focus on helping people to understand wills and inheritance, and everybody should know by now how important life insurance is. So we really don't focus too much on that, other than, listen, if you don't have it, we need you to get it. But we deal with things like advanced directives, durable healthcare power of attorneys, regular power of attorneys, getting people to put those estate planning affairs in place and not charging folks $1,000 to do it. It doesn't take all that, right? Yeah. And most of the people that we want to help are not going to pay us $500 for a will. So, of course, we're not charging $500 for a will, because we are wanting to help people that are the most vulnerable by not having these things in place. So we got the stewardship bundle, we got the legacy bundle, we have the one-on-one coaching, and in January we are going to actually start something else that when we release the new website within the next couple of weeks, you'll see it, a community financial empowerment center, Jason. Wow. So we are building a community financial empowerment center, and we are launching it right here in my own community, because we've been able to do a lot of work in my local community. I live in a place called Opelika, Alabama, which is right next door to Auburn. And last year, I was involved in a lot of conversations with city officials and community leaders, focusing on affordable housing and bringing a fresh perspective on affordable housing, and how do we tackle some of these economic challenges that people are having in the community. And listen, brother, the city of Opelika, and I'll be very intentionally grateful, our mayor and our city council, they got behind us and they did something that nobody else has ever done, and they threw real money at us. And they said, do the work. And I was like, what? Yeah, like for real, like,
wow.
Thank you. And I'm telling you, they gave us real money to do the work, and it allowed me to hire a couple more people. I have a program coordinator, Jaquetta Kennedy, who is awesome and allows me to be able to give my time and attention to Point University because they're paying me as well. But PRF doesn't have to suffer because I wasn't going to let that be something that happened anyway. But to have somebody that's doing the day-to-day and understands me, understands our mission, that's what it's about. And so we have been able to help hundreds of people over the course of a year, so much to the tune that they gave us some more money this year. And so now we understand by laying that foundation that it is necessary for city governments and county governments to partner with us to do the same thing we've done for the city of Opelika and the citizens and the people that spend their time, money, and talent in this community to be better, because the proof is there. The data bears it out, and there's still a lot of work to be done, but as long as people are coming, then we can continue to keep doing the work.
Wow. Dr. Nate, I am inspired. I am fired up. And folks, let me tell you something. He gave breaking news, right? That is like, that's not just on the edge, that's bleeding edge. So,
I've been trying to hold it in too.
I hear you. So, Dr. Nate, where do they need to go to keep checking back on the site, and if they feel compelled, which I believe they should, to make a donation?
Sure. The website is PRF, so you know by now PRF stands for Possessions, Resources, Finances, PRF Ministry with a Y.org or PRFinstitute.org. You can always email us at Dunlap, my last name, at prfministry.org, or you can reach out at 334-759-4884.
Yes, sir. And folks, we will have all of that information in our show notes. So if you're listening to this live or via podcast on your player of choice, don't you worry. We'll have the show notes on jerichoforce.com under the blog section where we archive all of our show notes. So don't you worry. Dr. Nate, before we get out of here, there's three things that I wanted to touch on. Two of them are your books, because you talked about legacy, because I know that's right in your wheelhouse. So I want to talk about your two books, and then I want to end with the work that you're doing at High Point University. So as we begin to round out the conversation, you have two books, and you're one of the best communicators that I know, and I love your writing style because you communicate with not just clarity, but passion. If you all have not realized by now, Dr. Nate is going to talk about you being empowered, and you can see that coming across in his writing. So real quick, Dr. Nate, your two books, Don't Leave Me Like This, Inspiration to Leave a Legacy, and What's Next, Preparing for Eternity. Give us insight on those two publications.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. So yes, the first book, Don't Leave Like This, it tells a story, my story, another story of having three father figures in my life, and all three of them passed away within a 2-year period. And when they passed, they all had certain things that were not together. And so through my pain, through family members' pain and hurt, through some things of ignorance, through some things of maybe limited financial means, I'm sharing those things that we experience. At the same time, communicating to you the importance and the value of why you need to have your earthly affairs in order. And I wrote that book back in, 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And really grateful for the support that has come thus far, but again, is out there. And I think about this, Jason. I think about how I wrote that book in 2016. and then to know what happened in 2020, in 2021, and how families and people could have been in much better positions if they would have got a copy of the book and then did some of the work that has come from what was written inside of the book. And so, yeah, that book, Don't Leave Me Like This, that was the first book that I wrote after my dissertation. And then the other book, and I said 2016, it was 2017. But then I wrote another book called What's Next? Preparing for Eternity. And that focuses on legacy, but it comes at it from a different place. One of the things that God revealed to me was that when people pass away or are going through situations of a medical nature, it's a long road for a lot of people afterwards, right? I mean, think about the time during COVID-19, which, again, I wrote this book before for the most part, but just think about it, how so many people had so many issues during that time frame, right? And because of the long road ahead that people would not imagine, it's necessary to be able to have a tool like this as a pastoral care reference. This is what I'm claiming this to be, because I need pastors and those who have pastoral hearts to get it. And think about this. When somebody passes away, people need to be able to have time and room to grieve, right? And oftentimes there's things that go lacking while people are grieving. And so this book really helps the ones who are the caretakers, the pastoral care agents, to be able to say, all right, listen, you grieve. I don't need to be coming to you, asking you about this, that, and the other, because you're not ready to deal with it. So it takes the burden off the one who is grieving, because there's some what we call destinations in the book that talk about, what do you do with the mortgage company? How do you deal with the car? How do you deal with the bank accounts? Here's why you can't just go and get money out of a bank account. And all of those things that are the destinations that's listed in the book throughout the journey will make sure that the person's time left here on earth doesn't be a very difficult or more difficult time because of things that the person who is no longer here did not take care of. And so that's part of it, right? But the other part of that is, when you read it as an individual, it opens up your eyes to say, oh my gosh, I have not done this. I didn't think about that. I didn't think about this. And prayerfully, through the power of God, what it will do will compel you to say, you know what, I read this, I know I'm not there, let me go ahead and take care of it. Or let me reach out to PRF Institute so they can help me understand what some of the resources are that I need to be dealing with, because I just don't know how to navigate this right now. And I want better for my family, and I don't want to leave them like this, and I don't want their time of eternity to be prolonged longer than what it needs to be.
Absolutely. Love that, Dr. Nate. And folks, I don't speak from just encouraging you to get it. Dr. Nate knows I got these a while back. I've had these two books for a minute, so make sure you grab a copy. Dr. Nate, where can everybody go get a copy of these two books?
Well, let me tell you, you can go on to Amazon and purchase the book. However, the books are on the PRF website, and every book that I sell on the PRF website, I don't get any money from it, because I wanted to go back into the work that PRF is actually doing. So I would encourage you to purchase them from the website. You can get them from prfinstitute.org or prfministry.org. Then you can get a autographed copy as well.
That's right from the author, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Nate, as we close, I misspoke earlier. Listen, shout out to you if you go to High Point University, but we're talking about Point University. So we're not in North Carolina, but Point University here in Georgia. So, Dr. Nate, you do so much, and you float between so many different priorities. Tell us about the work that you do and your role at Point University. With a diversity, as the diversity officer, I believe, if I'm getting that title mixed up.
Oh, well, It's funny you said High Point, right? Because listen, my father's from High Point, and my family's in High Point. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's amazing. That's the Dunlap side of the family is in High Point.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Point University, West Point, Georgia, 4-year Christian institution. It's challenging work. I'll be honest with you. It's challenging work because diversity, equity, and inclusion is so biblical, it ain't even funny, right? I mean, it's very, very biblical. If you're willing to look and see what the Bible has to say about it, right? Which means that sometimes the work of a chief diversity officer is going to challenge. I tell people all day, as often as they will hear me, my job is to be a disruptor. My job ain't to be destructive, right? I'm not trying to destroy anything. That's not the nature of it. But it is to be a disruptor. Jesus disrupted, right? He didn't allow folks to keep doing what they were doing without putting some folks in check saying, listen, you're a hypocrite. If you really are what you say you are, then get it together. And so this is not, my approach necessarily in that way, but trying to make sure that the young people that are coming through that institution primarily, right, the young people primarily are able to understand diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially from and through a biblical and spiritual framework, which I am building right now, and so that they can be better and more productive in society. We want them to be change agents, right? We want them to be transformative in their workplaces. We want them to be able to know how to handle situations of race and bigotry and racism and discrimination, and to be able to handle them from a godly perspective, which is not always just taking it on the chin. It's standing up for right. It's standing up for somebody else. It's knowing how to articulate that is not right, and being able to do so in love, even when folks don't want to hear it. And so there's a lot to do in so many institutions, not just mine, when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And especially trying to help people that may believe that they've been doing it well for so many years, but now their eyes are kind of open that you haven't been doing it wrong, but there's a better way of doing it. And so trying to navigate those waters is challenging. Trying to make sure that I get institutional buy-in is challenging. But I found that as I've been able to explain what I'm doing and how I'm taking things to a different level, and I'm not doing it by myself, that I need others to have the courage, to have the candor, to be able to deal with matters that sometimes are unpleasant, whether it's at the senior leadership level, which I sit, or whether it's somebody in a staff position making an hourly rate. Everybody has to be a part of the process. And if we all commit to being a part of the process, then we should all be committed to our progress.
Love that, Dr. Nate. You yourself are a change agent, and you are multiplying agents of change in our young people. Shout out to you, Dr. Nate. I got to tell you, Dr. Nate, you and I could be here for 3 hours, but we know that unfortunately we can't we can't do that on tonight. Not on tonight, but I just wanted to say, Dr. Nate, I greatly appreciate you and love you, brother. The impact that you're making, the conversation. It's never a dull moment with Dr. Nate. It's always going to be a powerful story. It's always going to be something new. And I just appreciate you for who you are, Dr. Nate.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you and the work you do. And I'll tell you, I mentioned to a colleague before the show, and I was like, we got to get Jason to connecting with our students at Point. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, he's the truth. So we're going to see how God makes that happen, even if it's something virtually, because the work that you do, my brother, and for those who may be on listening to me, definitely need to check out the work that you're doing with Jericho Force. The two of us together, brother, listen, I don't know if the world is ready. Oh my goodness, yeah, your whole take on stewardship, and I don't find, and I'll say this, I know time is well spent, but I don't. It's refreshing to be able to have not just conversation, but actual dialogue with another brother in Christ that really gets what stewardship is about, and you get it, right? You get it. I got your book too. It was sitting on my nightstand, but it's sitting behind me on the bookshelf. But yeah, it's refreshing to be able to have somebody that understands stewardship and the principles of stewardship. It makes all the difference in the world, and big ups for you and the work that you're doing, and I just can't wait. I cannot wait until we really collaborate. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
you get
I'm
me.
feeling it right now.
It could be virtual. I'll come down to Point. It doesn't matter to me. I'll drive down. I'll get on Zoom. It doesn't matter. So, folks, you're hearing it live. This is real time collaboration right here on the Jericho Force podcast. Yes. Well, we gotta get up out of here. Like they say, Dr. Nate. We don't have to go, but we do. We got to get up out of here, though. Got to go home, right. But we do have to end the show. Dr. Nate, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. Folks, if you did not know, that literally it's taking time out of his schedule because he eats, sleeps, and drinks what he does. So him coming on tonight was definitely him being generous with his time, because he is going to attack the day tomorrow. I assure you that. So, yeah. So thank you so much, Dr. Nate.
Bless you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right. Well, folks, you know how we end things here on the Jericho Force podcast. Don't conform to the world's way of doing business. Transform by doing business God's way. We'll see you next time on the Jericho Force podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Jericho Force podcast. You can catch us live on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time and on demand. Check out jerichoforce.com/podcast for more details. To learn how to live out your faith in the marketplace, grab a copy of Jason Davis's book, Fortify, Being Rooted in God's Plan for Work and Business, available on Amazon.